There is someone in your life right now who smiles at you and wants you to fail. Not a stranger. Not an enemy you can see coming. Someone close enough to know your plans, close enough to celebrate your birthday, close enough to say, "I'm so happy for you," while something cold moves behind their eyes. And the terrifying part is not that they exist. The terrifying part is that you have been trained your whole life to ignore the signs, because you were taught that suspicion is ugly, that seeing the worst in people makes you the bad one. So you keep smiling back. You keep sharing your wins. You keep handing your life, piece by piece, to someone who is quietly rooting for your collapse. By the end of this, you will know exactly who they are, because your own memory has already been collecting the evidence. You just never let yourself read it. Let's start with the first sign, because it is the one people miss most often. When you share good news, watch the pause. A real friend reacts instantly. There is no gap between your words and their joy. But a hidden enemy needs a half second, sometimes less, to arrange their face. That pause is not politeness. That pause is a system rebooting from disappointment to performance. If you have ever told someone about a promotion, a new relationship, a win you worked hard for, and felt a strange flicker of coldness before the congratulations came, you already met this person. You just didn't want to believe it. The second sign is what I call comparison disguised as concern. This person never attacks you directly. Instead, they say things like, "I just don't want you to get hurt," or "Are you sure you're ready for that?" It sounds like love. It sounds like someone protecting you. But notice the timing. It only appears right before you're about to do something they wish they could do themselves. Real support pushes you forward. This kind of concern is a leash dressed up as care, designed to slow you down just enough that you never outpace them. The third sign is information hoarding. Watch how much someone tells you about their own life compared to how much they ask about yours, and then watch what they do with what you give them. A hidden enemy asks a lot of questions, not because they care, but because information is leverage. They want to know your weak points, your insecurities, your plans, so they can either use them later or simply feel superior knowing something painful about you that you haven't told anyone else. If a person always seems to know more about your struggles than your successes, ask yourself who has been mining you for material. The fourth sign is the public praise that comes with a private edge. This is the friend who compliments you in front of others, but somehow the compliment always includes a small cut. "You look so good. I didn't expect that dress to work on you. I'm proud of you. I never thought you'd actually finish it. Everyone around you hears the praise. Only you feel the blade underneath it." This is one of the oldest tricks in the book, because it lets them look supportive while still getting to remind you, and remind themselves, that they see you as less than. The fifth sign is silence during your worst moments and sudden closeness during your best ones. Pay attention to when people show up. A hidden enemy disappears when you're struggling, because your pain doesn't interest them, it doesn't threaten them, so there's nothing to manage. But the moment you succeed, they reappear, warm, engaged, suddenly very present in your life again. That is not friendship. That is proximity management. They stay close enough to monitor you and distant enough to never actually support you. The sixth sign is the group dynamic shift. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the temperature change? Just slightly. Just enough that you couldn't prove it, but you felt it in your body? That instinct is not paranoia. Humans read social rooms far faster than we consciously process. If certain people go quiet when you arrive, or the energy of a group visibly resets around you, some part of the room has already been shaped by conversations you weren't in. Trust that feeling. Your nervous system picked up a pattern before your logical mind caught up. The seventh sign is what I call selective memory. This person will remember every mistake you've ever made in vivid, specific detail, and somehow forget every kindness you've shown them. Bring up something you did years ago that embarrassed you, and they recall it instantly, word for word. Bring up something you did for them, and suddenly their memory is foggy. Memory is never actually neutral. What people choose to hold on to tells you exactly what role you play in their internal story. If you are only remembered for your failures, you already know the story they are telling about you. The eighth sign is the backhanded introduction. Listen to how this person describes you when they think you're not really paying attention, or when they're introducing you to someone new. A real ally builds you up without hesitation. A hidden enemy softens every introduction with a qualifier. "This is my friend. She's actually pretty good at her job, considering. He's smart in his own way." Small words, tiny hedges, but they do enormous work. They plant a seed of doubt in every new person you meet, so that even your reputation among strangers gets quietly managed before you ever open your mouth. The ninth sign is competitive generosity. This is subtle, And most people never catch it because it looks like kindness on the surface. This person offers you help, advice, or gifts, but always in a way that keeps you one step behind them. They'll recommend a book they've already mastered, so you're playing catch-up. They'll offer feedback on your work that focuses on what's missing rather than what's strong. They'll introduce you to their contacts, but only the ones who can't actually elevate you past their own level. Generosity, in a healthy relationship, wants you to eventually outgrow the help. This version of generosity is designed to keep the gap exactly where it is. Now here is the part that matters more than spotting them. Why does this happen? Jealousy hiding as friendship isn't random cruelty. It's usually self-protection wearing a disguise. Somewhere inside that person is a belief that your success makes their life smaller. Not because it's true, but because comparison is the only language their self-worth understands. When they see you rise, it doesn't just remind them of your progress, it reminds them of every version of their own life they gave up on. And most people cannot sit with that kind of discomfort honestly. So instead of asking why they stopped chasing their own goals, they quietly try to slow yours down. It is easier to dim someone else's light than to sit in your own darkness and ask why you let it go out. This is also why hidden enemies rarely announce themselves. Open enemies are easy. You can defend against someone who openly competes with you, argues with you, tells you to your face that they disagree. But a hidden enemy needs to stay inside your trust, because outside of it, they have no access to you. The mask isn't just for you. It's for them too. As long as they can call themselves your friend, they don't have to confront the ugliest parts of their own jealousy. Attacking you honestly would mean admitting they want what you have. Undermining you quietly lets them avoid that admission completely. Here is the psychological trap most people fall into once they notice these signs. They think the solution is confrontation. Corner the person, expose them, force them to admit what they've been doing. But confrontation with someone who has spent months, maybe years, hiding behind a smile rarely produces the truth. It produces a better performance. They will deny it, act hurt that you would even suggest it, and somehow you will end up comforting them for accusing them correctly. That is not weakness on your part. That is the design of the mask. It was built specifically to survive scrutiny. There's a deeper layer here worth sitting with. Jealousy, this well hidden, usually means the person actually respects you, even as they resent you. Think about that for a second. You don't build an elaborate, sustained performance of friendship around someone whose success doesn't matter to you. Nobody spends years quietly tracking the achievements of a person they consider beneath them. The amount of energy it takes to maintain a hidden enemy relationship is enormous, and people only spend that kind of energy on someone they secretly measure themselves against. So in a strange, uncomfortable way, being someone's hidden target is also a form of recognition. It's just recognition delivered through sabotage instead of honesty, because honesty would require them to admit you're ahead. The real move is quieter and far more powerful. It's called information diet. You do not need to end every relationship with someone who shows these signs. Sometimes that's not realistic, especially with family or long-term social circles. What you do need to do is stop feeding them raw material. Stop sharing your plans before they're finished. Stop describing your insecurities in detail. Stop handing over the emotional ammunition that later gets used, subtly, against you. You can be warm, you can be civil, you can even still care about this person, while quietly closing the door on the parts of your life that don't need an audience. Notice, I am not telling you to become paranoid or to treat every friend like a suspect. Most people in your life are not hidden enemies. Most people who ask about your day actually want to know. The goal here is not fear, it's discernment. Discernment means you can hold two things at once: openness to real connection and awareness that not everyone who smiles at you is on your side. Those two truths are not in conflict. In fact, holding both is what makes you harder to manipulate and easier to actually trust, because you stop projecting blind loyalty onto people who haven't earned it. There is also something you need to hear clearly. None of this is your fault. You were not naive for trusting someone who turned out to be envious of you. You were simply decent, in a world where decency is often the exact quality predators of this kind are looking for. The lesson is not to become cold or suspicious of everyone. The lesson is to pair your warmth with observation. Watch actions during your wins, not just your losses. Watch who stays present when you're struggling. Watch whose silence gets loud right before your success and whose joy is instant and unforced. That pattern, tracked over months, tells you more truth than any conversation ever will. And here's the final thing, the part almost nobody says out loud. The existence of a hidden enemy is, in its own strange way, proof that you're doing something right. People don't quietly resent those who are standing still. They resent movement. They resent growth they can't match. If someone close to you has been slowly working against you this whole time, it means some part of your life is threatening enough to make them abandon honesty and choose manipulation instead. That's not a reason to shrink. That's a reason to keep going, with clearer eyes and a much shorter list of people you hand your plans to before they're already real. So take a moment right now and think of one person, just one. Someone whose reaction to your good news never quite matched the moment. Someone whose concern always seemed to arrive right before your biggest steps. You already know who it is. You knew before this video even started. The only thing that's changed in the last 15 minutes is that you finally gave yourself permission to trust what you already saw. You don't need to confront them tomorrow. You don't need a dramatic exit or a speech about betrayal. What you need is smaller and honestly more sustainable. Just start noticing. Start tracking the pause after your good news. Start tracking who shows up when you're struggling and who shows up when you're winning. Let the pattern build itself over the next few months without forcing a conclusion before the evidence is ready. Because once you truly see someone, you can't unsee them. And from that point forward, you stop handing them the parts of your life that were never safe with them to begin with. That's not revenge. That's not coldness. That's just, finally, protecting the life you're building from the one person who was never actually cheering for it.